Hey kids, it's Jurassic James, Jurassic James, looking at Herrerasaurus. So this dinosaur is one that is very well known, very understood, but also has a problematic placing. Now I'll explain that later on too. But first, geography. So I'm filming this from Texas right there. This guy's from Ichiquilindo, which is formation from South America, which is in northern Argentina. So it's right there. So the time that this dinosaur lived, you could have walked from where I am to where it is. And in fact, the continents altogether, there was no Atlantic Ocean. They were pushed together in a giant supercontinent called Pangea. And you can also have walked from Alaska to Australia, pretty much. Now, how does that happen? During the Paleozoic time, before dinosaurs, excuse me, the continents have been pushing together and they form all these mountain ranges. So during the late Permian and throughout the Jurassic period, we had Pangea, the supercontinent. So you say, well, why don't we see more dinosaurs? You know, like if you find them in South America, why don't we find the same species in North America? Because they're connected. Two things. One, many animals don't want to migrate huge distances just in general. The food's where you are, it works. Two, when you form a giant continent, supercontinent, mountains form in the middle. So think of it this way. Take two pillows, push them together. Once they touch, keep pushing, they will kind of butch up like this. The idea here is that when you push two continents together, it makes a mountain range, as we see in the Himalayas today in Asia, or we see in the Rocky Mountains, essentially in North America, and so on and so forth. So that's why we don't see the dinosaurs all over the world, but we don't see the same species all over the world, but we see the same body type, the same form, same family representatives. Now, with Herrerasaurus, same rules apply. Newer, or actually older models for me, and then newer. They are Jurassic World heavy, for obvious reasons. The first one I received, I can't remember what year it is. Let's see. This is, it's a small script. So let me take my light my mother bought me and use this to see that tiny little name. 2010 Collect A. Makes sense. So, this little guy here is my first Herrerasaurus, and it is a tiny little model, and it is really great. It hits all the main points. One thing to point out is, let's see, did it do it right? Yeah. So looking very closely, the hands. Now, Herrerasaurus actually has 5 fingers. There are 5 actual digits. Problem is, the 3 of them are really big and clawed. The other 2 are small, and they're actually and they have no claws, and they're so narrow, it's believed they could possibly be in the skin. Maybe the 5th one, definitely, but the 4th one may have been actually just a little bit of nub. And so this guy does show 4 fingers, so it's not entirely wrong. The skull's really great, the way it has kind of a triangular shaped skull like this, that's really cool. And this animal would be about, if I were sitting here, it'd be about this tall. It's a really big, tall animal. I mean, you're thinking early primitive dinosaur, so you're thinking, okay, so it's this tiny little thing. No, it's pretty big, you know, right? So this is a pretty good model. I like the proportions of the body, the tail, the feet. So dinosaurs have 5 digits usually, evolutionarily speaking, and they lose them going in, right? The feet are like this, and they lose them like this. So T-Rex, for example, has like the dew claw that you can still see, but this particular, if it were a foot, this toe, it's like this little notch of bone up here. Herrerasaurus is very similar that way, but its toes are a little bit longer though, the outer toes. So it's so the idea here is dinosaur abuse. The idea here is the little dew claw there makes sense. Now the one that I use as an icon, at the time I made the website, this is the icon of my Herrerasaurus, this guy here. This one is a really weird looking dinosaur toy. Now one thing to point out with Herrerasaurus in general is that when you look at it, it looks like a theropod dinosaur, but it has nothing special about it. And what I mean by that is when you look at the raptors, they have they're feathered, they have these sickle claws, they have these certain snouts and hands. The Allosaurus have these crests in their heads. The Spinosaurus has long snouts. The Tyrannosaurus is biting, crushing skulls. The Bellosaurus is short, bulldog skulls. These guys have like nothing amazing that stands out to them, which is one reason they're not as well known. But also it makes sense because they are at the base of the family tree. Well, I'll explain that more with these guys later on. But in general, this guy has like really big feet, really long arms. The hands, I mean, having 3 claws isn't terribly wrong. I would have liked to have seen some kind of a nub or something, because that 4th and 5th finger are, you know, there's bones in there, you know, right? The foot's overall okay. The dew claw's a little too high up for my taste, and the tail is too small and too short. Overall, the mouth does articulate, pretty cool. And so what's really neat about Herrerasaurus, it was dug up in 1958. Basically a rancher, that's who's the name of a rancher, it was named after Herrera. I had a student once in college, and she heard his name was Herrera, and I was like, and part of the test was write 3 dinosaur names, and I said, there's a dinosaur named after your family name, Herrerasaurus, and she still got it wrong. It's Herrera, you know. Anyway, so the idea is that the ranchers showed them where they found it, and they found this animal, and it was dug up, and between the 1968 to 61, sorry, 1958 and 661. I know Harvard came down, had some fossils, and they took years for them to get through customs, you know, in Argentina, which is a problem in paleontology when you're dealing with moving fossils in other countries, how you work with that. And so it took a while for it to get kind of recognized and named, but what really makes it special is an early theropod, or, well, depending on who you talk to, right? And so looking at this guy here, overall, pretty cool model, but it's not super scientifically accurate compared to the other guy. I just wish I had like one that looks like this on that scale. Now the Jurassic World ones kind of take after this Papo mode. This I think it's Papo. Yes, that's how you know it's Papo. So they don't put their name on it, right? Let's see. No, wait. Let me double check this. Use my light because the names are so tiny. I'm getting old. Oh, Schleich. So it's Schleich, basically, the German company. And so it's almost like the Jurassic World figures kind of took after this mold. And so, as you know, I'm a sucker for a repaint. So they're all the same model. They're just different repaints. And so the idea here is that, I mean, there's the difference. If you push this one, the skin shows. They all move their heads up, the jaws open, the arms move. The hand, nope. Okay, so the hand has 3 main claws, but then the 4th one, which is reduced, that is correct, but it's clawed, so that's incorrect. So if it were not clawed, that would have been like a great hand. Because even the 5th finger, you may not see it, it'll be in the skin. If it was exposed like this, it would not have a claw, definitely. So overall, darn. The feet are okay. I mean, they're really big because of the toy engineering to stand up. But there are the 3 big claws, foot. There should be some kind of nub or something on the side, like our guy here. But they lack that. Now, this one has the damage. You push a button and all that. This one has no damage. And this one has, yeah, so these are directly just repaints of the same mold. That one at least has a gimmick going on. So, you go to Burlington, the store, I guess resale-ish kind of place, cheaper discount place, and I found this guy who normally was $16 for $4.99. So I bought this guy. And so with the official scissors, Jurassic James, I like the sweet noise. Let's see, go ahead and cut that here, and there you go. And they are back. So this one actually, in my, other than the little tiny guy, this is like the best Herrerasaurus I have. Again, well, no, look at the details. Oh, darn. Okay, so I recap my statement. First of all, there's your DNA code, because kids today can't just play with toys, they have to go online. Second, I think if you push this, yeah, it does a head bob. It's like the music appreciation kind of thing. The arms are a little too long in my opinion, but the hands have the 3 big claws. There is no smaller claw. So again, depending on your reconstruction, it's not entirely cast out to say it has no 4th finger visible, because it will be, they're so reduced in the skin kind of. But I would just like to see a nub there. The head overall, given that, you know, it is a Jurassic World figure, it is pretty good, pretty nice. And like I said, it's just decent proportions. The tail, I'm sure, bigger. But overall, it's alright. It's an alright figure. Now, with this being said, I'm going to go over this animal's history, its story, its family, what's going on there, because it's kind of a big deal in paleontology. And it's actually interesting that it's not as popular or well known because of reasons. I mean, I guess, you know, we look at this, and the biggest one known, I think, estimated was like 18 feet long or something like that. So that's a pretty big animal. But the thing is, dinosaurs like T-Rex and Dinosaurs are huge. So people don't see it as a big dinosaur because, you know, it's only 18 feet long sometimes. And so where it lives in South America, well, in Argentina particularly, we now call Argentina, it would have shared its environment with a guy named Eoraptor, discovered in 1993 by a different expedition with Paul Sereno on it, who I met 2 weeks ago and got a picture with, which will be on my website pretty soon. And so Eoraptor, who I mentioned earlier, these guys are kind of connected in the sense that they're from the same time, same place. And when Herrerasaurus was first discovered, it was thought to be an early relative of the sauropod long-neck family. Eoraptor still is in that branch, but it's a long story. I'll get to that in a minute. I keep teasing towards where I'm getting towards. But in this environment, these two lived together. It would have lived with many early dinosaur-like things that look like this. This is one of those like pack of 8 dinosaur toy things, and so I can't quite. I think it's a Struthiomimus. I don't know. I can't tell, but it has enough generic weirdness to it that it reminded me of the early dinosaur morphs in South America. There's a lot of these little dinosaurish things down there, and Herrerasaurus is bigger than most of them. These two animals are these synapsids. These are animals that are relatives of mammals. These two in particular did not live in this environment, but animals like them live in this environment, right? So you're kind of seeing his environment there. And we've heard of Postosuchus, we saw in a Jurassic World one. There is an animal like Postosuchus living in this environment that's bigger than Herrerasaurus, called not Sarcosuchus, Saurosuchus, which I keep complaining that Jurassic World's making figures of animals that are partial skeletons that we don't really see much of, and that's kind of annoying to me. Saurosuchus, make that thing, please. There's no other toy. I've searched for years. There's no model or toy of Saurosuchus I can find. If you know of one, put it in the comments, please. Send me a picture or something. Anyway, so that's South America in a nutshell. In Europe, around the same time, well, actually, no, we have, this is Argentina, technically. In Brazil, we have Mosasaurus, which is an early Jurassic World figure that came out, the new lines. It is what we used to call a prosauropod. They are now early sauropodomorphs to the long neck group. Mosasaurus meaning mouse lizard. I don't think I did a video on this. Maybe I did. I don't know. It means mouse lizard. The one they found was so small. It was actually a baby they found. So, but it was still a small specimen, right? And Guabisaurus, which I did a video on before, which is a early sauropodomorph relative. These were in Brazil, so they were close together, different times. Well, still Triassic, but different regions. In Europe, let's put them over here. In Europe, we have something called Liliensternus, little predatory dinosaur here. We have, and this is a, what company is this? This is a Woollyland. Ooh, I don't have very many of those. This is a Plateosaurus, which I did a video on already. Collect A, Plateosaurus, what we formerly call prosauropods. And finally, this guy, I think it's what company? Collect A as well. Lufengosaurus. This is another, what we call prosauropod, early sauropod relative. And so these guys are living together in like Germany and parts of Europe. Mastodontosaurus. This is big. In the name Mastodontosaurus, you think mastodon, like the elephant thing? No. Saurus, like a lizard? No. It's an amphibian. But it's like the giant salamander. It's like 20 feet long or more. It's also a Woollyland figure, so it's one you don't see very many of. And we have in Scotland, Ornithosuchus. This is from the old 97, 98 Jurassic World line. This is a relative of Postosuchus, but found in Scotland. So we have the European branch, there's 2 South American branches, and of course the ones in the late Triassic that I talk about the most, I've had the most experience with, I've seen the most of, are our late Triassic North America group. And so the Jurassic World Park line gave us, not in a movie, but in toy form, a long time ago, Coelophysis, which I told you before. I went to Ghost Ranch, Mexico, a couple years ago. I was heading back from Wyoming on a dig, and I said, I want to go there. And I went there and looked around. It's a really cool spot. And I saw these, and the head paleontologist showed me a block about this big with 3 Coelophysis skulls in it. And they were just perfect little skulls. And I couldn't take a picture because there was a new critter, a new species that they were identifying in the block, and it was the whole thing in paleontology. But if you saw Walking with Dinosaurs, they had a whole section on Coelophysis. This is my favorite Coelophysis figure. It is a 2017 Safari, and so here's a little guy there. And so Coelophysis is a really big deal, and they're really well known in New Mexico. And they have a cousin called Tawan, which is Tawa, T-A-W-A. This guy is something that's really important later in this video. And so the little predatory dinosaur. The ones you've seen Walking with Dinosaurs 2 are our Postosuchus, this guy here. And we see our 2008 Safari Postosuchus. Dino-Riders Placerus, which is a therapsid mammal-like reptile kind of animal. The term mammal-like reptile is bad, it's not a good word. It's actually, they're called synapsids, we call them that, or the particular group are synapsids, or their families, Dicynodonts. Here is the Ichthyosaurus named Desmatosuchus. And it would have been something like this, but without the bigger horns here in this environment. It was with Herrerasaurus. A Phytosaur, which are these large croc-like animals that are not crocodiles. And so they're found to, something like that we found in South America with Herrerasaurus, although these are North American species. And of course, last but not least, in this collection, the Papasaurus I did a video on too, an upright croc relative that lived in late Triassic North America. So as you see by the sheer numbers of things I have to show here, there's a lot more attention to the South American species, North American species. Herrerasaurus is in a very well-known environment. It was like a floodplain area with volcanoes. You see layers of ash here and there. So the volcanoes are erupting every so often, depositing ash. The rivers are flooding over, making layers. And so this is the late Jurassic world. What's really neat here is that dinosaurs are not quite in charge. They are not we know now they are the future, but we often think of the age of dinosaurs as from the beginning of Jurassic to the end of Cretaceous, like the idea that the Mesozoic is their time. In post-Permian extinction, there's a lot of stuff, and I've mentioned it in the channels before, a lot of critters are coming along and they're vying for the earth. And so dinosaurs are like the last tail end of the Triassic. They're showing up. And they are not the top predators in the environment. And it's not until the Triassic-Jurassic extinction event that when a lot of these other crocoid things are kind of wiped out, the dinosaurs step up and become the next ruling group. And even in the Jurassic, dinosaurs are this age of giants. You have all these big sauropods and stuff. But it's not until the Cretaceous period where it's known as the age of dinosaurs, because many of these roles in the environment dinosaurs are occupying, these niches, these jobs, right? And so even though dinosaurs are around from late Triassic to in Cretaceous, and technically Cenozoic with birds, these guys are not in charge. They're tiny bits here and there, and other things are in charge. Now, with that being said, let's go over how Herrerasaurus is related to everybody and why it's a big deal and why everyone argues about it constantly, and then we'll be done with this video. So, let's see there. There you go. We'll be over here. And so I do find interesting that the Jurassic World people, toy line, are making all of these cool things. I do find it interesting, though, that they're just skipping certain animals like Saurosuchus. I keep saying that. Please think of Saurosuchus, Jurassic World. If you watch this or you're people, I doubt that at all. But let's see. Let me get them out of the way. It's a toy heavy video. Did not realize that as I was setting it up. Oh. Now, and again, something like this, but no, without these, live with this guy. Now, in Dinosaur World, or Dinosaur Family Tree, the analogy for you friends are, let's see, so there's you, if you have any siblings, you have your parents. Your parents have siblings called uncles and aunts, they have kids, they're your cousins. You and your cousins share a common ancestor. So you're in your household, they're in their household, but you have a common ancestor called grandparents, right? So in the family tree of life, like that, expand that out, you have great-grandparents and great-great-grandparents, and they have siblings, and they have kids, and you have fourth and third cousins removing all that, right? Imagine that family tree, but with dinosaurs. And so, in general, there are two major branches of dinosaurs, the Ornithians and the Thorischians. The Ornithians, ornith meaning bird, and istia meaning hipped, are the dinosaurs that usually have beaks, and they have third hip structure. So their upper leg hip bone, the ilium, is like this, and their two leg bones go straight down. And then so where we have our hip like this, we have like a basket as humans, assuming you're human. Dinosaur hips are like this. So if you're a Thorischian, your ilium, your hip bone goes up, your femur goes out and down, and your pubis bone, the one in the front, points this way. If you're an Ornithian, it points backwards. So who are these guys, right? The Ornithians include the ornithropods, the bird-foot dinosaurs like the duckbill hadrosaurs and the iguanodonts, the Thyreophora, which are the shield bearers, the ankylosaurs and the stegosaurs, and the marginocephala, which means edge of head, the horned ceratopsians, and the pachycephalosaurus. So these three major groups, which break down to more groups, are the Ornithians. They're the bird-hip dinosaurs. Ironically enough, birds did not come from these guys. They came from the other group, right? So the other group is called Thorischian, and that's again with the pubis bone facing forward, and that includes the theropods, the meat-eating dinosaurs usually, or omnivores, or Thorazinosaurus who eat plants, we think, and the sauropodomorphs, the long necks, which include again our friends, what we used to call the prosauropodomorphs, but now they're just So what's the big deal here? These are Thorischians, these are Ornithians. So again, the idea is that they're individual groups and species here, but if the group have a lot in common, Just like you have you and your siblings, and you're in your parents, you're in your own house. You have cousins in their own house, and there's a grandparent, back in time. So what's the big deal, Herrerasaurus? When it was first discovered, it was first thought to be a carnosaur, one of the big predators like Allosaurus, right? But as other studies come along and people look at it, say, well, wait a minute, this guy, where does it fit in the family tree? It has traits of both groups. So what's going on here is initially Herrerasaurus was thought to be a theropod, like a closer to the Allosaurus and T-Rex. More recent studies say, well, no, actually, what if it is actually an early member of the sauropod group, sauropodomorph? And see, like how that happened. So all dinosaurs, well, dinosaurs in general eat plants, different groups, but they all come from carnivorous ancestors. And an example of this are pandas. Pandas they eat plants, but bears are omnivores, and polar bears are hard carnivores, right? And so there's a huge debate over the last 70 years, well, 60 years, of where it falls in. And so the idea is that is it a basal theropod? Like Paul Sereno thinks this guy and Eoraptor were straight up theropods. There you go. We keep finding more animals in South America that are on this kind of borderline of being sauropodomorph or theropod. And the problem, of course, is Herrerasaurus is well known. We have a lot of that guy. But all the other animals we're finding, like jawbones and hips and stuff, and not the whole parts, and naming new species, and there's a lot of debate back and forth. And I've told you before 1,000 times in paleontology, I am not a debater. I don't fight people on ideas. In fact, the Nanotyrannus argument, I always joke and say, I really don't care, but people are so upset by it, emotional. And so the idea here is that they're trying to place where it goes. And so, as of right now, as I mentioned in my Eoraptor video, it falls under the early sauropodomorph. So before this line became big, heavy plant eaters, this is what it would have looked like, something like this. The Herrerasaurus is now, they're saying, well, is it a early theropod, or is it just another member of Saurischia? And what I mean by that is, there's an assumption that everything that evolved has some descendant, and actually it's the opposite of that. Most things that have happened don't have descendants. The analogy I give is like college. You have way more freshmen than you have like sophomores, juniors, and seniors, because more people start off in college and don't make it to the end sometimes. And so the Herrerasaurus might be, that's how I have it on my website as of right now, they might be, they're considered an not quite theropod, but they're an early Saurischian. So the hip lizard dinosaurs, they're in that group, but they're not quite theropods. So they're either a ancestor of one of the two or both groups, or their own little offshoot, they didn't really go anywhere. That's where they're kind of arguing. Another suggestion was that because they have so much in common with sauropods, maybe that the Ornithians and the sauropodomorphs and Herrerasaurus be kind of together, and theropods are the outgroup. That's one theory that everyone's really, really upset about, apparently. But in general, these guys, Herrerasaurus, the big deal is that I want to point out is that we're looking at it and saying it's such a well-known dinosaur with all these cool parts. Where does it fit in? I will remind you that when you look at the Herrerasaurus, where it sits in time and space doesn't really matter for overall. This animal, when it lived, had its lifestyle and it did its own thing. And I am very guilty of this in paleontology, want to chart everything and see where it fits in, and that is very important. But remember, this animal does not evolve to be, it's not saying I want to be a Tyrannosaur ancestor or a sauropod ancestor. It's just living in its environment doing things. And I will point out that after the permanent extinction, 250 million years ago, the Triassic period lasted 50 million years. Dinosaurs died out 65 million years ago, not counting birds. So 15 million years ago, you would be in the Miocene. That's when grass shows up, and that's when the more modern world points out. So looking in the time of the Triassic with this animal here, you wouldn't have said, I mean, we have the advantage of hindsight and fossil record, but it was just a critter, a big predator, not the biggest predator, but a big predator's environment eating smaller things. And you wouldn't have known what would have come next. So my example to you kids is that imagine, for example, there's an extinction event now, and let's think of some animal that's like trying to think of an animal that people just don't think much of. I would say it's like an opossum. And what if we learn that in 40 million years, opossums just take over the world, and they have they're everywhere, and they've evolved different giant opossum species and tiny opossums. That's what it's like for this guy here, is that the time it have lived is the dinosaurs are one of many trial groups, and that group just happened to be the ones that did really well. Now, we can talk about how and why with other videos, but that's what's going on with Herrerasaurus. And that's why it's such a hotly debated topic animal. Paul Sereno still, I think, argues it's a theropod. But many other paleontologists go like, no, not really. It's Saurischian. We can agree it's Saurischian, because it was thought to be not even a dinosaur for a long time. So we can agree it's Theristian, but we can't agree if it's a early sauropodomorph or theropod. So right now it's a Theristian, which is why on my website, on my dinosaur page, I have like Theristians, theropods, sauropods, Herrerasaurus, Ornithians, these guys. You like, I don't want to argue. Anyway, that's a really cool story about this guy. Is more to it than meets the eye. It's a really cool dinosaur in its own right to be appreciated. I wouldn't want to see one in the back alley. But last but not least, when I mentioned earlier in the video that it was something that when you look at it, it doesn't have any features that make you go, wow, because it is a basic form. And my analogy to this is in the early cars, like Model T Ford. We have all kinds of car designs today, all kinds of, but the earliest cars were like the same general design because it's a new technology. This was a, quote, new technology, evolutionarily speaking. And Herrerasaurus had the great advantage, unlike his competitors, to be bipedal. It walked on two legs. Its arms were free to grasp, and it turns out the muscle attachment points. And so when you pull like this, there are muscles attaching to your bone, and those areas are very rough usually, because it's hard to grab onto a smooth surface. So the bones are very rough with the muscle attachment points. Well, the attachment points in the hands and the lower arm imply it has a very good grasping ability. And so Herrerasaurus most definitely was eating smaller prey usually and grabbing onto things. Now, it could have eaten larger prey, maybe in groups, maybe, we don't know that, but it was living with large things like this, that kind of like this, so the role of being top predator it did not occupy. But again, its descendants and great-grand cousins or nieces or whatever did become the top animals on Earth. So that is Herrerasaurus in a nutshell. I will see you guys next week. We're doing Guanlong, I think the earliest Tyrannosaurus Rex relative, maybe. We'll see. I'll tell you then. Thank you very much. I'll see you guys later.